Okay, so again, my name is Shira Berkowitz. I'm the communications manager with Promo, and we are here to talk about the 2020 census and why or how LGBTQ people count. I just noticed my slide deck says LGBT, so prior apologies. Presented this with a group of older adults earlier. He was lopped off. I am going to share a slide deck with everybody in just one moment. Um, and do feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation. There's a Q&A down here in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and just jump on in. So let me go ahead and share the slide deck. All right, just getting the chat here set up. Okay, so the 2020 census and LGBTQ people, information and common questions. So it's really important for us at Promo that we empower LGBTQ people across our entire state to let them know that we count in the census, that we recognize that there are visibility issues, and that regardless if we see ourselves or not inside of the vocabulary of this document, it's a very simple questionnaire that each of us fills it out, because the services that the funding provided by the census goes into our community, into the social services that our community accesses. And we want to make sure that we do count across our state and inside of the census population of our state. So, like I mentioned, we are here, we count, my voice, my community will count in 2020. So I pulled the map just from today. These maps are at 2020census.gov. You could use the URL at the bottom of the screen, or if you just went to that census.gov website, it would ask you right at the top of the page if you wanted to see the most recent statistics. So you can see that the national response rate of those who have filled out the census thus far, there's about a 51.6% a national response rate, and Missouri has a little bit higher average than the nation. So we're doing really well. That might just mean that we have a lot of organizations like Promo working to push that message forward. But we want to keep propelling that higher and higher and make sure that we definitely get closer to 100%. So what is the census? The census happens every 10 years. If we aren't all counted in 2020, Missouri is going to be shortchanged for an entire decade. For every adult and child that is not counted, our state loses federal funding over the course of 10 years. And an example of what happened just 10 years ago, Missouri lost a seat in Congress because we weren't all counted. This is not a particular statistic just to the LGBTQ community, but it is a statistic that highlights what happens when not enough Missourians fill out the census, and what happens when our population in the state is not reflective of the accuracy of the population of our state. So the census takes a statistical approach and a full decade's worth of analysis of what is going to be reflective in that decade, and then won't come back around for a whole nother 10 years. So it's very important that this year we fill it out. And the census is working and really hard with the environment and the climate of the land with COVID-19 to make sure that we are counting everybody, or giving everybody a fair chance to count, considering that all of the deadlines for the census happened around the time that the states were shutting down and people were having stay-at-home orders. So due to the pandemic, there is a due date of July 31st for anybody to turn in a census online, which means that if you have not filled out the census online by the end of July, that there is an opportunity for people to come knock on your door. So our new messaging strategy is if you are that we're one trying to keep people social distanced from each other, and so to keep people from coming out to your house and knocking on your door, we would really appreciate everybody to just fill out the census online or to get it in the mail or answered by the phone by the end of July. Just like I mentioned right before, there's 3 ways to fill out the census. You can do so by calling in, you can fill it out online, or you can send in the census by mail. How did anybody find out about the census in the first place? Every home in the United States, every home address, sorry, in the United States received a form in the mail that was addressed to a resident. The census doesn't count who lives at that address. They count who particularly lives at that address. It's not your voting record. It's just who resides in that space. So it was addressed to resident at said address. And before March 12th, you can receive a paper census. On March 12th, a unique code was sent to every single one of those addresses. The code is what identifies you to be able to take the census. If you did not receive a code, you can go to the website and access one. On March 16th, a reminder letter was sent to every single one of those same residencies. And on March 26th, then a reminder postcard was sent again. So the code was sent twice, the exact same letter, and then a reminder postcard was sent. April 8th through 16th, a letter was sent in the mail that contained a paper copy of the census. So if the first 3 mailings that you got, the only thing that it had on it was hey, fill out your census, here's your code, go online or call this number, and wait if you want to fill it out by mail. On April 8th, or you could have received the full copy of the census in the mail to mail back, should you have not filled it out yet. And then these are old dates, but July 31st through the beginning of September, a census worker will come knock on your door if you have not filled out the census at all. So what is missing from this population timeline are houseless individuals who have an outreach strategy already. People who live in shelters receive codes through the shelter. Each homeless shelter received a set of codes per bed that they are allowed to occupy. And there's street outreach teams that have sets of codes that they're able to register people through for the census after July 31st when we do the door knocking. So that we're counting populations of people that don't live in residencies. So the 3 ways to fill it out, there's online, my2020census.gov. You can call this toll-free number. Once you call the toll-free number, it will ask if you need it in English. There's also a list of over 30 different languages to speak to the Census Bureau in. A blog post for assistance. If you go to promoonline.org/blog/census2020, all of this information is in clickable links. And all of the information that we're going through in this PowerPoint. And if you have not received your code to fill in the census online, then you can go to the same promo blog and click the link on that blog, and it will take you directly to the link to retrieve a code. So you respond benefits the LGBTQ community. For the first time, an unprecedented time in U.S. history, the census asks about same-sex couples. The Bureau collects data on same-sex households by asking how each person in the household is related to the householder. So at each residence, only one person fills out the census, no matter how many people live inside of that those walls. And if more than one person lives in that household, the next follow-up question is, how is that person in relation to the person who's filling out the survey who owns or rents the house? Your responses will provide the most reliable data to date on the number of same-sex marriages and same-sex cohabitating partners in the United States. It's a vital information for advocates, for researchers working on LGBTQ plus issues. So up until now, all of the statistics and the data came from additional surveys, climate surveys that happened outside of the census collection. And this will be the most accurate information that our country has ever collected on same-sex couples or partnerships. Households are identified as same-sex couple households if a spouse or an unmarried partner is the same sex as the householder. And these households are further identified as married couples or spouses and unmarried partners. So married same-sex couples made up about 59.4% of all same-sex households in 2017, a rate that we know or understand has more than doubled over the past 10 years. Okay, for transgender individuals, the census only asks if a person being counted is male or female, and challenging question to face. Because of this, many transgender, gender expansive, and non-binary individuals do not see themselves reflected in the census and don't want to fill out the census at all. We understand that this is a challenge to answer for all of these communities, or all of these people who hold this identity, myself included. For transgender individuals, the Bureau, however, respects how people self-identify on the census. It doesn't cross-check the information that you provide on the survey with any other source. So they're asking you in a, not a great way, because we didn't win this question to get more than just a binary option. They're asking you to answer as best as you can with however you self-identify for either of those two answers. And if you self-identify here in a way that feels most comfortable for you, it's best, right? So filling out male or female from you checking that box is better than asking the Bureau to choose it for you. If you do leave the answer blank, the Bureau is going to make a decision, because answers can't be left blank in the first 3 questions. The survey gets shorter and shorter each time you answer the question. So once you answer the question like, do you live alone? It knocks off all of the questions following that would ask about same-sex couples or any identifying information about a roommate, because you don't have that. So within the first 3 questions, you can't leave an answer blank. You can, but then the Bureau answers them for you before submitting it. And you cannot get in any legal trouble for self-identifying. Census law indicates that anyone who willfully gives an answer that is may be fined up to $500. So we've been hearing a lot of pushback that says, like, we aren't going to answer this question, because if I mark female and I am actually transgender female, they're going to find out about it. Or if I'm non-binary and I mark female, are they going to find out about it? And then I've given a perjury answer, then I'll be fined. This is not what the census is after. The law is not intended to punish people who answer the question in a way that better reflects who they are with regards to their name and their sex. Nor is it intended to enforce housing laws and policies. The point of having this rule is to essentially make sure that each household only submits 1 survey, which ensures that everyone is fairly and accurately counted, to make sure that people aren't using reaching for another code, or saying that they didn't receive their census and then applying for another code and then filling it out again. So I hope that answers all of the questions regarding what matters. The transgender, gender expansive, gender non-binary individuals still do fill out the census, even though we understand, as Promo absolutely understand, that you are not reflected in the survey questions, that you absolutely do count in the census, that statistically you matter very, very, very much in Missouri. And these resources are going to come right back to you. We're going to explain that in this part. So why does it matter that we fill out the census at all? And it matters because there's an increased amount of community service dollars that goes back into our state based on every single number of people who fill out the census. So each survey that's filled out is an uptick in the amount of community service dollars that we receive for our state, that we get fair congressional districting that comes out of this, so that there's gerrymandering laws that are reflected because people fill out the census, and we get an enforcement of our rights. The census counts, and so each and every one of them of people that reside in Missouri counts. In 2010, Missouri lost a seat in Congress because not everyone was counted, and we cannot risk losing another voice in Missouri for Missouri and Washington, D.C. For every adult and every child that is not counted, our state loses $1,300 in federal dollars every year, which adds up to $13,000 per person over the next 10 years. When we all respond to the census, we get more money to pave our roads, to rebuild bridges. Our healthcare programs and our community health centers get more funding to take care of our families, our friends. And schools get more important funding to take care of our kids, which includes after-school programs and school lunch programs. What social services come out of the census? The Missouri social service budget is determined by the population size. So when we count, our services that we receive count for us. An accurate census count informs the distribution over $675 billion annually in federal funding for community programs across the nation. We want to make sure that Missouri gets its fair piece of that budget. It includes programs like community development grants, HIV emergency relief projects, housing assistance, adoption assistance, career and technical education grants, child and adult care food programs, that's things like SNAP benefits, projects for assistance in transitions from homelessness. And for seniors, Medicare Part B is fully funded so our seniors can get the care that they need. And Medicaid long-term care services can help more seniors stay in their homes and live with dignity as they age. There's a lot of privacy concerns around the census, and we want to make sure that everybody understands what the Bureau is actually after, and then that there are, unfortunately, scammers that pop up around the same time that the Census Bureau is asking for information as an easy target. So the US Census Bureau keeps your information private, 100% private. They're not allowed to share your information with anyone, including other government agencies. They're prohibited from using census survey results for any other reason other than for sharing statistical purposes. So the answers to the survey cannot legally be used for any type of immigration, housing, or other type of law enforcement. And as it states, we will never share a respondent's personal information with immigration enforcement agencies like ICE, law enforcement agencies like the FBI or police, or allow it to be used to determine their eligibility for government benefits. There's a law that says you cannot share the survey responses for 72 years. And privacy concerns, so make sure that you count everyone in your living or your house or your apartment. So people who don't are not listed on a rental agreement but reside in your apartment count in the census. If they're not related to you, they count in your census. So if you are somebody who owns an apartment and has 2 roommates, or owns a house with roommates, the 3 of you count in that census. If you are somebody who rents an apartment and your friend is staying on your couch for a year, that is a person who counts inside of your household. If you are a family of 4, then all 4 of those people count on one census application. And the U.S. Census Bureau cannot share your information with your landlord. So, like I mentioned, if you are somebody who rents an apartment and has somebody who stays inside of your apartment, like a partner, but they're not on a rental agreement, the Census Bureau cannot share that information with your landlord. So it's important that you count that person anyways. A census worker. So the people who work for the Bureau and the people who come to your door to collect your information will never ask you for your social security number. Somebody who calls you on the phone and says, I'm collecting information for the Census Bureau. Can I have your social security number? That is that's not a legal or Census Bureau worker. So a census worker will never ask for your social security number. They will never ask for information about your bank accounts or your credit cards. And they will not email you about the 2020 census. It's organizations like Promo who are emailing you to say it's time to fill out the census, or Missouri Foundation for Health who are saying it's time to fill out your census, but nobody is emailing you the form to fill out your census. So it's important to remember that the only communication that you're getting from the Census Bureau are those mailings that have your code on it, or the one-time physical mailed form, the census survey, should you have not filled it out online or by phone prior to that date in April. If you receive emails about the census, it really is just from organizations like us encouraging you to make sure that you get that done. So in conclusion, the census will not ask if you're a U.S. citizen. That's not what's important. It's counting residents who live inside of the state of Missouri or any state in the United States. A census worker will never ask for your social security number or information about your bank accounts and credit cards. The U.S. Census Bureau will not email you about the 2020 census either. They'll keep your information private, and they're not allowed to share your information with anyone, including other government agencies. Completing the census allows for federal funds to be allocated based on populations. And the LGBTQ community utilizes a lot of social services that the census funds. So we want to make sure that there is money to fund our needs. Whether we're counted or not, we're going to use tools, so we might as well count to make sure that that there's proper allocations or ability to access those funds. And the census is our chance to make our voices heard, to make sure that we speak up, that we're there, and that we are counted within the population. If we don't respond, we risk losing our congressional representation for 10 years. And this is our chance to get that seat back. Okay, so I really appreciate everybody who was here to join me. And this is an opportunity to ask questions. Any questions that you have, you can ask them in the Q&A. You can unmute yourself if you would like to. Share a tidbit of information, or you can leave. It's totally up to you. But I hope this was a little bit more informative. Maybe I have to unmute everybody. I see a question. I just cannot find my cursor. Okay. My adult transgender daughter lives in our and I'm planning to declare her as female on the census. She has not yet changed her legal name. Am I required to enter probably her legal name? You are not. You are any name that she goes by is you can enter. Just like you can self-identify in any way, it can be a self-selected name. The census does not need legal information that is bound to any document or certificate. They're not going to find any document or certificate. So it can be the name that you go by. It can be her name. Whichever name you choose to write is valid and valuable information. Just like the same checking whichever identity box you or she chooses to check, the same thing goes with her name. Thank you for asking that question. Yes, you can use your preferred name. Are there any other questions? Okay, it looks like maybe not. I apologize if somebody is on the phone or they're trying to ask a question. I do not know how to unmute their phone. Okay, if you do have any questions, you absolutely can email Shira, SHIRA, at promoonline.org, or go to our website, promoonline.org, and you'll find a whole blog just dedicated to the census that we hope answers all of your questions. And thank you for joining us today. This was great. I hope that we spread the word. Tell everybody that what you learned today. Thank you. Thank you for being here with us.